Today we're smoking 4 racks of ribs on the Weber Searwood 600. I'm Johnny, you're watching A View to a Grill. The first thing we need to do is make our rub. I'm just making a simple savory rib rub, and we're going to start off with 4 tablespoons of sea salt, 3 tablespoons of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of granulated onion, 1 teaspoon of granulated garlic, and then 1 teaspoon of paprika. And then once you've added all your ingredients, put the lid on, shake it up, and when you're done, you should have a rub that looks like this. When I'm going to perform a long smoke, I like to do all of my prep work the day before. Let's go ahead and prepare our ribs. Most of these ribs are about 3 1/4 pound, and I do have 1 3-pound rack of ribs, which I'll show you later. Now, the reason why we want all of our ribs roughly the same size, it's so that they will all finish at roughly the same time. In preparing the ribs, the first thing I like to do is take off this little flap on the bone side of the ribs. And then once I have that removed, I like to take off the membrane. Now you can see that this one here, somebody scored that with an X, which makes our job harder, but with a little patience, I got all the membrane off the back. And to complete the prep of the ribs, I'll just square them off by removing the end bones. And now our ribs are ready to season. I'll get those bone side up, and then I'll season the edges of the ribs first. Once I have all the edges seasoned, I'll go ahead and season the entire bone side of the ribs. Now we can get our ribs flipped over. I'll just compress them together to make them a bit more perky. I feel like that gives you a more meaty bite. Once I've done that, now all I have to do is season the top portion of the ribs because the bottom and the edges are already seasoned. And here's what my seasoned ribs look like. Not a heavy coat. You can still see the flesh of the ribs through the seasoning. Now I have all 4 racks seasoned, so I'm just going to put these into the refrigerator overnight. Now it's the next day, so I'll remove the ribs from the refrigerator and just let them sit out while I go and set up the Weber Searwood 600. I'm going to be using the Knotty Wood Barbecue Company's 100% pure almond wood pellets. I'm not real sure how long these ribs are going to take or how much fuel it's going to take. This is my first time smoking 4 ribs on the Searwood 600. So I'm going to go ahead and fill the hopper with the entire bag of Knotty Wood almond wood pellets. I think today I'm going to smoke these at 250 degrees. At around 9:30, I get my alert that tells me that the Searwood 600 is ready to go. Now it's time to get our ribs on. I'll get the ribs on, and I'm going to leave them on the racks just because it's going to make it easier for me to rotate the ribs later. And I'm also going to set a timer that will go off at around 11:30 so we can check on our ribs for the first time. Now while those ribs are going, let's make our spritz. To make our spritz, I'm just going to use some leftover pickle juice. And since I'm using my electric sprayer, I'm going to run the pickle juice through a strainer to remove all the large bits. Since I don't have a lot of pickle juice, I'm going to supplement that with about a 1-to-1 ratio of tap water. And there you go, my favorite spritz. And now our spritz is ready to go. We're all set up. All we have to do now is monitor our cook. It's around 11:30 and our timer has gone off. So let's check our ribs. Let's get our lid open. As you can see, not a lot going on. They have developed a little bit of color, and at this time it is 11:31. Grab your spritzer, spritz all your ribs really well. Once you're done, close the lid, and here you go. It is still 11:31. You want to be in and out as quick as possible. Don't bother checking your ribs because they're not done. And then from here on out, I'll be setting a timer so I can check the ribs every hour. Here we are. It's almost 12:30. Our timer went off. Let's check on our ribs. Now, normally I would not give it a temperature check right now, but since I'm making a video, I thought I'd let you know what the internal temperature was at this point. We are a long way away from these ribs being done. Now it is 1:30 4 hours into the cook, and we're going to go ahead and spritz our ribs. Also, at the 4-hour mark, check out this. You can already see a little bit of pullback on the bones. And that's our first sign of these ribs moving along, but they're not ready. And at this time, I'm also going to rotate the ribs. I just move the left ones to the right and the right ones to the left. It's an hour later, 5 hours into our cook. Let's get our lid open, spritz our ribs, and at this point I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to check on the bounce. I'm just going to hold the ribs from the middle and just see how bouncy they are. I'm also going to rotate and spin all the ribs. I went ahead, spritzed them one more time, and closed the lid. It's an hour later, and now we're 6 hours into our cook. Let's check our ribs again. The first rack I'm going to check on is the smallest rack because it has the best chance of being done. And let me show you what I'm looking for. And the first thing you notice is almost every bone has some pullback. Now let's pick it up from the middle and look at the bounce of this ribs. They are extremely floppy. That is a good sign. Next, I want to show you these cracks on the surface. Those are some pretty good sized cracks, and that is just the flesh tearing as you pick it up. This is my favorite check right here. This is the bend. So I'm going to grab this by the thickest part and support it by the first 4 bones. And then look at this bend. That is what you want to see in a rack of ribs. Now these aren't going to be where the meat falls off the bone. They're going to have a nice bite and a nice chew. By my estimation, these are done. Now we'll quickly go through the other 3 racks of ribs, and you can see the bend is not as much on this one, so we're putting it back down. The bend is not as much on this one, put it back down. And this one, same deal. You do have a false positive in the size of those cracks, but I'm going to use the bend as my judgment on these ribs as well. There you go. We've checked all the ribs. Now get the lid closed, and I think these ribs need only 30 more minutes because they're really close. So I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. And now it is 4 o'clock, 6.5 hours into our cook, and let's check our ribs. And I'm just going to go straight in for the bend test on these, and check this out. That first rack, to me, that's done. That second rack, to me, that's done. And now that last rack, pick it up, check out that bend, and to my estimation, these are done as well. Now get them all into the Cambro, and we're going to let these rest for 45 minutes to an hour. Now, if you don't know, I have an Instagram page. If you wouldn't mind heading over to the Instagrams, giving me a follow at View to a Grill, I'd appreciate it a lot. So our ribs are done. Now it's time to check on our results. This is the first rack of ribs I pulled off the Searwood 600. Beautiful color, nice and dry surface, perfect. And this is my first time using the Knotty Wood almond wood. So we're going to check it and see what kind of flavor it leaves on these ribs. It looks like this one particular rib is screaming my name right now. So we're going to go ahead and remove it from the rack and use it as our taste test. This is also the thinnest rack of the 4. And check out the moisture in this cut. Looks pretty good to me. And a comment from my last video, someone wanted to see the underside to see if the underside was burnt because I cooked on the bottom rack. And you can see that it's not burnt. But I do want to say and stress that I did not use any sugar in my rub. Maybe that would have changed some things, but as far as for a savory rub, everything looks just fine. Let's give it a taste. And for me, these are perfect ribs. They have a nice bite. You can see here where I bit into the rib that it pulled off the bone cleanly, and the moisture that's on the bone. Yeah, these ribs are good. The Knotty Wood almond wood pellets left a nice, clean flavor on these ribs. Nothing overpowering. And yes, I would use these pellets again. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, go ahead, subscribe to the channel right now. Thank you for watching a View to a Grill. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, y'all.